season 2, episode 4 is titled Eldest, which is a direct reference to Tom Bombadil, because they've brought Tom Bombadil in because there is apparently an effort here, I think, by the showrunners, creators of Rings of Power, to bring the stuff that they cut from the Lord of the Rings movies into this show as like this desperate act of fan service. And really I want to focus on that. I want to focus on this idea of fan service, fan bait, nostalgia bait, member berries, blatant references and callbacks and Easter eggs, which in some instances, when used sparingly, I think can be fun, right? But it's like putting too much salt into a dish. When you just keep on ladling these things in, the resulting product is hard to swallow because it's just so flagrant. It's such a cheap form of storytelling, right? We've seen this kind of thing in other shows, like in True Detective Night Country. There are all of these callbacks and references to season 1 of True Detective with the Tuttles and, with Travis Cole. And then the line where the guy's being tortured by the police and he's like, "Time is a flat circle." And I just wanted to shoot my TV. I wanted to get my gun out and shoot my TV. No, I didn't really want to do that. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry, TV. I didn't want to shoot you. I didn't want to shoot anybody, but it was very frustrating because in a way, I'm not saying that these things, that season 4 of True Detective or the Rings of Power, actually diminish the originals. I don't think Lord of the Rings is diminished necessarily by these things that Rings of Power is doing, but there is to some degree, a lot of fans, I think, come to this having maybe only seen the movies or maybe not even seen the movies yet, or they're just not that well versed in Tolkien, and they think, oh, hey, like this is the way it is. This is Tolkien. What we're watching here is the story. They don't realize that it's been changed so much. And when they hear it's been changed, they don't realize why that matters, why it's a big deal. And in some ways, you're watering down and diluting and changing and altering the greater work of Tolkien, right? Even though you're not changing the books, people are like, well, the books are the same. They're just fine. Yeah, I know. But a lot of people are being misled into believing that this is some representation of what Tolkien wrote. And it's not. It just isn't. And the same thing with True Detective. A lot of people are like, oh my God, they said the thing. They said the thing from the first one. And it's like, they're tying it together. What does it all mean? And it's like, no, Night Country is not True Detective. None of that is connected. The only connections are these references, these callbacks, these rotten Easter eggs. And so here we have Tom Bombadil brought in, and we have, the stranger, the Gandalf figure, or whatever. Maybe he's a blue wizard. I don't give a fuck. He gets swallowed up by this tree, right? By this olive tree. It's like Old Man Olive, right? So this is of course they have to put that in there because that's what happened to the hobbits in Fellowship of the Ring. They're going through the old forest and they sit down by the river and then they fall asleep. And anyway, so they have to put that in there, and because they get swallowed by the tree and then rescued by Tom Bombadil, and the same thing happens here. Then we have the Barrow Downs, because even though this is a totally different place in this episode, we have the Barrow Downs, because that's another thing. The hobbits got, after they left Bombadil and Goldberry, they got lost in the mist on these hills, and then they were captured by the Barrow Wights, and it was Tom Bombadil who saved them again. Well, they have to throw the Barrow Downs into this into this story, or into this episode, even though it's nowhere near Tom Bombadil. It's way over where the elves are, when this is, Galadriel and Elrond and their little band of elves heading to Eregion from Lindon, and they go to the Barrow Downs, and they're like, I sense a dark presence here. Oh, dear me, whatever could it be? Oh, it is the evil of the darkness, and all this mumbo-jumbo trying to sound like Tolkien fantasy nonsense. None of the elves ever talk like real people. They don't ever have conversations that are just normal, like there's nothing funny or natural about them. It's all these grandiose proclamations. They never feel real. It's very frustrating. It's also frustrating that at the Barrow Downs they encounter the Barrow Wights. Galadriel even says, they're the Barrow Wights. And the thing about the Barrow Wights is that they were not introduced to Middle-earth until the Witch King of Angmar sent them to the Barrow Downs in the Third Age. Thousands of years later, there were no Barrow Wights here, but they bring them in anyways, because this is not in any way, shape, or form an adaptation of Tolkien. And again, people are always like, you focus so much on whether it's like the books. What is that? Is that even meaningful TV criticism? Because, well, here's the problem. Because they're not following the books, because they're not building off of what was written about the Second Age, because they've condensed things and gotten things out of order, they've fundamentally broken the story. And because they don't know how to have a coherent story, it's just a jumbled mess at this point. For instance, suddenly Adar and his orcs are down by Eregion. They've made it all the way from Mordor, which everybody knows is called Mordor now, even though it was just recently named that. Like, did Adar send out like ravens to all the great houses of Middle Earth, like letting everybody know? Because everybody suddenly knows it's not the Southlands anymore. They're just, it's like they got a psychic burst and they know it's Mordor now. But he's gotten all the way there, and then the elves get there, and somehow, even though he's coming from one direction, they're coming from the other direction, the orcs and the elves run into each other. And then we get a goofy elf getting shot by an arrow moment, and then Galadriel heals him with her ring, and then she goes to fight all the orcs, and we get another callback. She says, "Go back to the shadow." And here's where I feel like this does it doesn't change what the books are, but for people who are watching this thinking this is all connected somehow, this is a line that Gandalf says to the Balrog, He says this when he's facing the Balrog on the bridge, and they both tumble down into the abyss. And, here is Galadriel riding a horse towards a paltry band of orcs and saying that to them. And it's like, this was his line. Like, this was a great line from Gandalf, but now you have Galadriel saying it like however many thousand years earlier to some orcs. It's so lame. It's such a shitty way to tell a story. And it's so cheap. And it just feels very, very, very boneheaded and dull. And it doesn't stop there. With Arondir and Isildur and Estrid, who's actually a bad guy, they're going, and Isildur gets like in quicksand, and Arondir tries to save him, but they're sucked down. And then Estrid finds Gandalf's staff and sticks it in the mud, and she starts to pull it out. But then this big serpent thing comes out, and Arondir bursts out of its belly, which I knew was going to happen. Like, it was so obvious that he was going to burst out of this thing's belly, and then it's dead. And then Isildur's like, "Oh, Arondir, whatever was that thing?" And Arondir is like, "There are nameless things in the deep cracks of the earth." And it's like, okay, this is what Gandalf says after he comes back as Gandalf the White. He talks about the nameless things that are deeper than the dwarves delve, and that Sauron isn't even aware of because they're older than he is, right? These mega creatures, these ancient beasts that are so dark that Gandalf won't even speak of them. But this one's like in a mud puddle. Right? Like, how is that a nameless thing from the deep cracks of the... See, this point is where it's like you are so obsessed with references to these other... They're so much more obsessed with references to the source material and to the other books than they are more obsessed with that than with actually trying to stick to the source material. Right? It's shallow. It's surface level bullshit. And then Arondir makes a joke that they'll call it breakfast, and that's like the only joke that we've heard in many episodes. Finally, we come to the Stwars, the Styrs. Now, I've already made a video talking about how badly mangled the hobbits are in this show, but effectively, the Harfoots in Tolkien are like the most settled down of all the hobbits, and the Stwars live by rivers and water. And here, of course, the Harfoots are nomadic. "We don't have a home," Nori says. And the Stwars live in the desert. This would have been a good opportunity to make, like, the Stwars, like, a darker-skinned hobbit society, to give some sort of coherence to, like, here in the desert, the hobbits have brown skin. And out in the woods, the hobbits have light skin. Because this is a medieval society, and there's not a lot of mixing, right? Not like our society, which, is great. It's great that our society is diverse. But to make a plausible, believable world, you can't just do that in these shows. Anyways, but they do talk about how, like, a guy with the last name Burrows left their village a long time ago and went exploring, which would explain how there was a black hobbit with the Harfoots, right? Could have been because of this. They could have tied it all together, but they didn't even do that because the Stewards are just as much of a hodgepodge as the Harfoots, which is weird for these cultures that are totally insular, right? So anyways, the Stewards are super annoying. The guys in masks hunting down the Nori and Poppy are super annoying. And then maybe the most galling and silly, goofy thing in this whole episode is that they call this guy, this bearded guy, Kieran Hines character, the Dark Wizard. That's what they came up with, the Dark Wizard. And Bombadil is over there telling the stranger, you will have to face Sauron and the Dark Wizard. Because they so badly misunderstood Bombadil's character. He's not interested in the doings of these societies, not interested in the world of men. He's not interested in Sauron or the Dark Wizard or any of that. He is like... there's lots of different theories about who or what he is, right? He's been around forever. He's a force of nature. He's something that's totally separate from everything else. And even, in the Fellowship of the Rings, when they say, why don't we give him the ring? Gandalf says he would forget about it. He'd lose it. He doesn't care about this stuff. But here in Rings of Power, he's like, I can't teach you magic, not Gandalf, because you are not worthy of it yet. And you must face blah, blah, blah. Go on it's just not Tom Bombadil in any way, shape, or form. And it's not about the color of his coat or his boots. It's about how they've interpreted this character. And their interpretation is ridiculous because they don't give a shit. They're just putting it in here as a callback, as a reference, as a way to make people on TikTok and Reddit and social media be like, oh my God, it was so cool to see Tom Bombadil on the screen. Yeah, terrible episode. Elves are flat and ridiculous and don't talk like real people. We didn't get any Numenor, which is good because the Numenor plot is stupid. It's almost as bad as the Hobbit plot, maybe worse. We did not get any Anatar or Celebrimbor, which is the strongest of the different subplots, I'd say. Galadriel continues to be totally unbearable. They have made her character so annoying every time she opens her mouth. And no, it's not because she's a female character. It's because she's a badly written and very grating character. Like, every time she says something, it's so serious. Oh, we are all at war now. Oh, Elrond, I am a bratty teenager. Elrond's all right, honestly. Like, I think the whole thing with the rings and Elrond is silly, but overall, as far as characters go, I don't hate him. I hate Theo. I was really rooting for Theo to get his ass killed, and I'm still rooting for that. Ents, I like seeing Ents. I just think Ents are cool, and there was the Entwives, but they're way too fast. They're talking way too fast, so... I don't know. What else do I have to say? This was another stinker. We have 4 episodes left. Can you believe it? Like, what is the story even at this point? There's no focus. There's so many different things going on. None of it seems to matter. It's all disjointed and disconnected. And when they try to connect the dots and they bring Adar all the way from Mordor, who's suddenly here, like, why is he even here? I thought he wanted to... Just none of it makes sense. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Peace. Guys, Christmas big deals never coming to a stop.